Welcome to the Too Opinionated Podcast with Attorney K
and Nurse A.
And this is a space where, despite what we've been told, you can never be too opinionated.
So we want to talk to you about a really important topic, and it's been buzzing all over the internet, all over. You've been hearing things about GPT as well as just AI tools. But today we want to talk to you about something even more insidious. What happens when AI and pornography is integrated? So before we get into it, I think a quick definition of what deep fake porn actually is, or what deep faking is really important. So what is a deep fake? Deep fakes are created by AI tools and have grown in popularity over the past few years. According to Sensitivity AI, a research company that actually tracks deepfakes of about 90 to 95%, most of them are non-consensual pornography. It affects only people whose faces appear in images, but also whose bodies have also been used. So again, this is quite an insidious problem, and it actually came to a head where various different social media influencers actually had been deepfaked, and it came out in a very tricky YouTube type of story.
So let's give you a little bit of background on that trending topic in regards to these YouTubers who were frankly victims of this deepfake pornography. So in terms of background, we're going to talk about Pokimane. So she is a Twitch YouTube streamer, and she really is one of the most popular streamers on Twitch. I don't know if that still applies, because I know that since these deepfake incidents, she has really taken a step back from her career, which is unfortunate given the harassment that she's faced regarding the deepfake pornography that her face and image has been used in. So recently she quoted, stop sexualizing people without their consent. And she was tweeting this, and it caused an online debate around what are the guidelines here? Are people non-consensually being placed in these pornographic videos? Because with AI technology and deep faking, the figures essentially look like these people. There really is very little way to tell that it's not the actual person that's in these pornographic films. So another social media influencer, Maya Higa, who's an environmentalist and has about 730,000 followers on Twitch, also posted a Twitter statement in which she compared deepfakes to being raped in 2018. She said that the situation made her feel disgusting, nauseous, vulnerable, and violated, all of which are feelings that were far too familiar to her. Another unfortunate incident with another popular Twitch streamer, QT Cinderella, posted a tearful denunciation of deepfakes of herself on her Twitch stream as well. She said, if you're able to look at women who are not selling themselves or benefiting off of being seen sexually, if you're able to look at that, you are the problem, and you see women as a sexual object. So there had been a great response online to some of these public statements from women who suffered from being used in deepfake pornography, and Amy will jump into some of the responses that came forward.
So before I actually get into various different reactions from males and females and folks that are non-gender conforming that actually watch this, I want to talk a little bit about what the creator said. He actually did offer up an apology, but his apology was kind of backhanded. And although he apologized, I'm going to actually quote what he said. To be quite honest, if I wanted to continue this, what I got was the best advertisement I could ever ask for. But after seeing the situation of that, a couple apologizing and a few streamers' reaction to who I thought did not care, I feel like a total piece of shit that I am.
But I was on Pornhub, dude. I was on a regular ass normal website. I would do it. I'm sorry. I'm just sorry. I don't support this stuff. I don't believe this stuff. I'm not like a advocate in any way. I regret it. I would never do it as long as I live. Like, as long as I live, I'll never do anything like this again.
Yeah, absolutely. Doing that was very shitty. And I think the other thing is he probably thought that he wasn't going to get caught, because I believe he was actually talking about something different, and the actual images kind of came up and people were able to track that he actually had deep fake porn these particular women. So again, he was probably apologizing out of the fact that merely he got caught, not because he actually felt guilty. So in terms of some of the reactions that folks had, I'd say overwhelmingly a lot of women were actually quite angry about this and were saying, you know what, we shouldn't be sexualized in this manner. This does feel like you're taking our images without our consent. But I think what was even more disturbing were some of the males' comments. Well, look at how some of these female influencers dressed. What did they kind of expect? And these were some of the things that really actually gave me pause to say, you know what, this is how men actually think about women in this way, that we don't own our own bodies. If we can't express ourselves sexually and without feeling, demonized by other individuals, they see it as a way, well, if we're able to show your breast, then we should be able to see the whole thing. And And I think that is within itself hugely problematic. I should be able to dress however the way I want to dress without men feeling that they can invite themselves into, hypersexualizing me or feeling that I'm a sexual object. I should be able to dress in whatever manner I feel is necessary.
Absolutely. I mean, it's akin to that old adage of, well, if you were dressed like that, then you're asking for it, right? And, when we talk about, if we want to talk about asking about it, I mean, from a normal social context, clearly that is bullshit. And from the legal side of things too, when we talk about asking for it, women putting themselves in positions to engage in porn or what have you, any sort of sexual relations, we're talking about consent. And consent in this fashion is not implied. If these women are dressing or however they want, engaging in whatever activities they want to, there is no consensual act in people taking their images that are looking very lifelike, engaging in sexual acts, and then posting them on the internet for everyone to see, because the technology with deepfake is very difficult to even tell that is not that person in real life. So at some point, you're really creating a representation of this person who clearly they're public figures engaging in things that they're not, but that's not discernible to viewers. And, a lot of the literature I was reading from professors and other healthcare professional psychologists, they were talking about the level of trauma that these women are placed in when they're seeing themselves engaging in lewd acts that they did not consent to, and that, like one of the Twitch streamers mentioned, are just disgusting, feeling violated and feeling completely exposed. And it's just not okay.
Yeah, and I think that it's very concerning that the technology is getting much better. I'll be honest, I just was on Twitter the other day and these images popped up of Donald Trump being arrested and they looked so real. And it was only through some of the comments that I was like, oh, these, like, he wasn't actually indicted at this time. These were actually AI generated images. And one of the things they're like, oh, look at the hands. The hands are kind of tell you whether they're real or not. And the thing is, I'll be honest, most people aren't paying attention to the hands, especially if it's deep fake porn. They're not paying attention to those types of details. And again, you are taking someone else's image without their permission and you are sexualizing them. You are turning them you are making them do something or putting them in a position that they never actually accepted to be a part of. And I agree with that individual who said that they liken it to being like rape. I think that I could only imagine that if my image was used in such a manner, how that would affect me in my professional life, in my home life, in the work that I do in terms of advocacy within my community. I think, again, the implications go far and wide. And I think this is a good part where we can talk about some of the implications. Like you had mentioned that one of them aren't even doing the work that they used to be doing in terms of the streaming. And I think that's hugely concerning. If it's impacting the way that we, live our lives, that's huge. And I think that no stories can really account for the way that this made these women feel and other women feel that are going through this situation.
Absolutely. And when we talk about the potential significance of the impact of using imagery that looks to the naked eye like it's genuinely that person, I know you mentioned the hands. One other way I saw people saying that you can tell is that they don't blink like a normal human. But, who is thinking of that when you see a quick image online and that influences public opinion, that influences your reputation, it impacts your career, your professionalism, all of those things. And it can have really, really huge impacts on just the world and society in general. For example, you talk about the deepfake of Donald Trump. There was one with the Pope.
Yes.
There was one with the Pope, right? And if people are believing this, it starts to sway public opinion. It can impact policy. It can impact voting. Even, I was reading up on. You remember when Elon Musk was smoking on a podcast? He smoked a joint on a podcast or something, and Tesla stock crashed, right? So imagine we're creating images online of these public figures, influential political figures, huge CEOs of large companies doing things that potentially are objectionable to a certain faction of the population. And if you see that and believe it, because to the naked eye, a lot of people can't tell the difference, or you read things online and you're swayed by that. So influencing market conditions, influencing how people are voting when they see Donald Trump, that's not really him. These things can have such a widespread impact that as technology develops, while technology is incredible and it allows us to do so many amazing things, it can be hugely detrimental if not managed or regulated, or at least in my opinion, there should be some sort of disclosure that this is not a real image or something, because to people viewing, how are you supposed to tell?
Well, let's be honest. I think this is where some of those other types of conversations need to be had, where we need to see stronger legislation for women. Again, just backtracking even a little bit, when I was looking through and combing through the comments, a lot of these males, a lot of men were kind of poo pooing it off, just being like, well, these women sexualize themselves anyways. Why do you think we watch their content? Why do you think we go on their channels? And that again is a part of the problem. And I think this is where we have to start having other forms of education that occurs in terms of talking about consent, talking about, respecting other people's boundaries in their bodies, because there's a huge culture out there where there are men that feel that this is acceptable. We're not talking about it today, but I hope we can eventually talk about toxic masculinity, where there's like this rise of men that worship people like Andrew Tate, and they feel like, rape and these things are acceptable, and they're absolutely not. So we have a greater conversation even beyond the walls of, AI and technology, that we actually just have an implicit problem with men and toxic types of behaviors towards women. And again, this really goes down from like my lens, my healthcare lens, and how that would impact an individual. And I can only think to myself that, of course, these women are probably feeling depressed and anxious. Like you said, you had mentioned that some of them have actually not been streaming as much because they're probably dealing with the ramifications of all of those feelings of what has happened and what has occurred to them. Maybe it has impacted their income. Maybe it has impacted their own psyche. I can only imagine if an image that was generated of me, they stuck my head on someone else's body, how that would make me feel. And again, it would manifest itself in physical symptoms. So of course it'll affect your mental health, which is hugely important, but it also can affect those physical symptoms. So maybe you're eating less, maybe you're eating more, maybe you're engaging in unhealthy or risky types of behavior. Maybe, you're losing weight, you're gaining weight. Maybe you're feeling more sleepy. Maybe there's, all those telltale signs that you might be suffering from depression. You're afraid to go out. You're afraid to engage online. You're afraid to just do those normal things, or you don't have the energy to do those normal things. You're avoiding relationships. Those are all signs that your mental health and physical health are deteriorating. And those would all be signs that would actually point to something like this happening to an individual. And it's very, very disheartening.
And we have to remember, like, these women who are being victimized, quite frankly, they're young women. I mean, I think Pokemon's when she was, at her Twitch streaming like height of fame with over 9 million followers, I think she was like 19.
Yeah,
Something like,
wow.
these are young women. And so the impact, like you said, on their health and well-being psychologically, as well as their livelihood. I mean, this is impacting their ability to make money. Their influential positions on social media is their career. So the attitude that, well, they're asking for it, or, well, they shouldn't dress like that, and having that condoned, I can't imagine the mental stress and trauma that puts these women in. It's disheartening and stressful for me to even hear that. And I'm not, fortunately, in that position. And I think that's what we need to be thinking about, right? Everyone can be subject to this. So if one day it's you and it's impacting your money and your well-being and your family, your kids seeing you online someday, like, it's really unfortunate. And I think that condonation of the actions that are victimizing others is key. And for me, when I think of it from a legal lens, right, we talk about regulation and banning these types of things that really victimize certain individuals that are largely women. And I think that's part of the key, right? So if we're talking about stats for deepfake porn videos, the AI firm Deeptrace found that there were 15,000 deepfake videos online in September of 2019, last count, and that's doubling over 9 months. But a staggering 96% of them were pornographic, and 99% of those mapped images were female celebrities or other female public figures. And that's the key, right? If this were impacting men, would legislation and justification of these acts be different? 100%. It's similar to the Roe v. Wade overturning, right? Because it impacts women's bodies, the reaction is very different. There's a lot of condonation, justification, and it would be different if this was impacting the status quo, middle-aged white male.
Yeah, I almost think to myself, like that statement that you made where, men might say to women, well, like you were asking for this. Could you think of a situation in which, the opposite was true, where a man dressed in a sexual way and they were victimized? And then we say, well, you know what, you were asking for it. Those situations just don't occur. It actually almost brings me back to, and I know this doesn't have anything to do with deep fake porn, but it has to do with the way that men perceive women's bodies. Sierra just recently, do you remember she wore that beautiful look? If I had them kids and I could wear that gown, I wear the same damn thing that she wore.
Hey, wearing the
But
hell out
people
of
were,
it.
if I had that body, poof, you barely see me in clothes. Like I should be able to be proud of the way that I look. If I want to celebrate myself through the expression of wearing clothes or not wearing clothes, that is my right to do so. And it is nobody else's right to come tell me what I should wear or how I should behave or that I'm affecting them in some way. If you are looking at a woman's body and is making you react, that is all on you. That is not on that other individual. If it is you wanting to go hypersexualize them, or you want to touch them, or you want to take matters into your own hands, that has nothing to do with how that other individual is dressed. That is a personal failure. That is a moral failure on your behalf, and not that woman who's dressed in that way to celebrate her own body, who has the right to do so. And I think that we need to move away from those narratives where we're attacked, because women do it too, where you attack other women, how they're dressed, whether they're bigger or they're skinny or whatever the case may be. Like at the end of the day, that individual has chosen to wear that. That is the way that they want to express themselves. And we should be thankful and be like, you know what? I wish I could do that too. We need to have those greater societal conversations surrounding beauty, surrounding, self-expression, surrounding what it is to be beautiful, or accepting that people want to express that in different ways, and move away from this hypersexualization. And this is where you need to start teaching your young boys about this behavior, and your young girls about this behavior, and what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. Because again, we have a greater responsibility as a society and as a culture to really start changing the idea and the way that we think about women's bodies. And this whole deepfake porn thing is out of control. My heart goes out to these women who are experiencing this. And I think that we need to have stronger protections again for women surrounding this. So one of the things that we did find from a source, and I'll post the source in our show notes, is that there is some legislation that is starting to happen. So again, how can we protect ourselves against deepfake? So legislation is beginning to address the threats of deepfake video. So for instance, in the state of California, 2 bills passed last year that made aspects of course, not the whole thing, aspects of deepfake illegal. So it's section AB 602, ban the use of human images, synthesis to make pornography without the consent of people depicted, and AB 730, ban manipulation of images of political candidates within 60 days of an election. The fact that there's a stipulation between 60 days of an election still pisses me off. But again, at least there's some work being done. And I hope that, again, we can continue to back this with stronger legislation to really protect women against this type of imagery as well.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in on that, because when we think about the values that a culture or society or organization or people uphold, you see that in the way that they react to certain issues in terms of formalizing it. So legislation, policy, and how they spend their resources, right? And it costs money to do lawmaking and, put in place all of the regulatory factors that would be necessary to monitor things like this. So, when we talk about revenge porn, for instance, most states have laws punishing revenge porn. Only, and you mentioned California, only 4 have some ban on some aspect of non-consensual deep faking. So that's California, New York, Georgia, and Virginia. The fact that across the board, this is not problematic to political figures to stomp out is telling of where the values are in that society and in what we hold true. And largely, I think a lot of these things are impacted by the fact that who's victimized, who's violated, whose bodies are being controlled in some form or fashion, at least perceptibly. They are having the influence over having these women perceived a certain way, whether it's actually them or not. But so in a way that's, they're controlling their bodies, just like reproductive rights for women. It's largely impacting women. So when we think about these value systems, right, you mention the legislation around political campaigns and elections and the 60-day, but when we see how we react as a society to the potential impact that it can have on politics and on world governance, I would not be surprised to see a lot more legislation or regulation popping up, because that's not now impacting women specifically. It's a larger issue there. And I can see legislators, politicians feeling that that's of quite a great importance, being able to potentially impact an election. I mean, absolutely, that should be regulated. But it's interesting how the perspective will change when it's, having power over women's bodies and then having a larger impact on policy. And the reaction is often different. So I'm interested to see how this pans out and how different states react to this issue.
Yeah. And again, I think this is where we also need to look at our leadership, look at the folks that are in politics. I mean, President Joe Biden was just here a couple days ago, and he had to chastise our government caucus. I don't know if you saw this, where essentially he was in the House of Commons talking to folks here in Ottawa, and he was saying to them, you should be congratulating Trudeau that you have a 50% cabinet, 50% women. And, of course, the Liberal side of the government and NDP were clapping and cheering. And of course, our Conservative government, very similar to your Republican government, weren't really
it's
clapping.
Not mine, girl. I just live here.
Listen, man. And then President Joe Biden was just like, you should be respecting women. You should stand up and clap. And of course, like little seals, they all got up and started clapping because it is a good thing to see more women in politics and within those roles of power and legislation. So again, I think this is where we need to see those types of movements, put people in these places where they can make these changes to really protect women. And again, I'm glad that we're starting to see this shift, and I hope that continues to shift even further. I'm happy to see, maybe it should go to 70-30. I don't know. Maybe I'm pushing it a little bit.
Yeah, hey, that's what I want to see. But look, when we talk about equity, right, we are both equity advocates seeking equity in different realms of our professional lives and just in society in general. And that's the crux of it, is women are equity seeking population, minorities or racialized folks, rather. It's an equity seeking group. And as a society, let's protect women, let's protect racialized folks, let's protect LGBTQ folks, let's protect these factions of our population that are equity seeking, that have not always had protections. We want to see that personally, in my opinion, I want to see that in our cultural fabric and society and our laws and how we act in response to things, even just in terms of public opinion. Like you said, justifying that, well, they were dressed that way, so that's right. Okay. That should not be condoned. And the individuals that are taking part in that and that are making those statements, they should be getting this public rap and having their careers impacted, and not these women who are victims. And that's what I would love to see more of going forward. Let's protect people who need the protections.
Agree. I 100% agree with you. And I think, again, I'm going to challenge you even on that term. Instead of equity seeking, let's make it equity deserving, because I feel that this is something that we deserve, and it's within our right to have that say and to be a part of the change and to move the needle from where it's at now. I think there's always more that we can continue to do.
I am with that 100%. Equity deserving.
So thank you so much for joining us here on the Too Opinionated podcast. If you like what you hear, please support us by hitting that follow and subscribe button below, and link to our YouTube channel at Too Opinionated, where we release our video podcasts. Or you can find us on all listening platforms, iTunes, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please rate and review us and leave us a comment and let us know what you think.
And before we go, we'd like to mention that we are speakers and consultants on a variety of these sorts of topics. So if you or your organization are interested in our services, please feel free to reach out to us for more information, and we would be happy to see how we can help. Again, we'd like to send a special thanks to our sponsor, Control Agency. They are a talent management agency and consultancy, Black-owned and based in LA. Thanks for joining us.